There's a moment in life where you pause and ask yourself, is this really it? Is this who I'm always going to be? For many people, that question feels terrifying. It whispers of limits, of stuckness, of a quiet fear that you've reached your ceiling. But what if that ceiling doesn't actually exist? What if your entire identity, your confidence, your success were all shaped not by talent, not by luck, not by intelligence, but by something far more powerful, your mindset? Carol Dweck, a leading psychologist, spent decades uncovering this truth. Through years of research, she discovered that the difference between people who succeed and those who stay stuck isn't their intelligence, resources, or background. It's the belief system they carry about themselves, about others, and about growth. There are two mindsets that shape your world. The first is what she calls the fixed mindset, the belief that your abilities, your intelligence, your personality are set in stone. You were either born good at something or you weren't. You're either smart or you're not. It's a belief that wraps failure around your identity. If you fail, it's not just something that happened. It becomes who you are. This mindset builds walls. It makes you defensive, scared of effort, terrified of mistakes, always trying to protect an image. The second mindset, and the one that quietly changes lives, is the growth mindset. It says that your basic qualities are things you can cultivate. That talent is just the starting line. That effort matters. That learning is more valuable than performing. In this mindset, failure isn't shame, it's feedback. Struggle isn't weakness, it's strength in motion. Every challenge becomes an invitation. Every mistake becomes a mentor. Think about it. Two people face the same problem. One says, I'm not good at this. The other says, I'm not good at this, yet. That one word, yet, is the voice of the growth mindset. It means you believe in the possibility of improvement. And that belief changes everything. Now, imagine what happens when a child, or even an adult, lives with the fixed mindset. They avoid difficulty. They seek praise, not progress. They stay in their comfort zone because risk might expose them, and so their world shrinks. But the growth mindset? It expands. It leans in. It says, this is hard, and that's why it matters. So here's the truth. Your potential is not predetermined. Your intelligence is not a number. Your value is not fixed. And the life you're capable of living? It begins the moment you start thinking differently. This isn't just about thinking positively. It's about choosing beliefs that build you instead of break you. The question is no longer, am I smart enough? The question is, am I willing to grow? Now think back to your childhood. Maybe it was a math test you failed, a sport you struggled with, or a time you were told you weren't good at art. Those small moments planted seeds, not just of disappointment, but of identity. And depending on how they were handled, those seeds grew into two very different trees. One filled with fear and avoidance, the other rooted in curiosity and courage. You see, mindset is not just a theory. It's a lens, a way of interpreting everything that happens to you. When you're praised only for being smart, you start fearing anything that makes you look less than perfect. When you're praised for effort, process, and persistence, you build a self that can handle the storm. Carol Dweck didn't stumble on this idea in theory alone. She watched it unfold in classrooms, in children, in athletes, in CEOs. One child fails a puzzle and gives up immediately. Another child fails and says, I love a challenge. What made the difference? It wasn't IQ, it was mindset. Let's take it deeper. Imagine two students get the same bad grade. One tells herself, I'm just not a math person. The other says, I didn't study the right way. I can improve next time. The first student shuts the door. The second leaves it open. Multiply that by every subject, every project, every new skill, and you realize how the mindset you carry silently shapes your destiny. And it doesn't stop at school. It shows up at work, too, in relationships, in goals, in the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening. The fixed mindset creates inner critics, voices that say, don't try too hard, or people will see your flaws. The growth mindset builds inner coaches, voices that say, keep going, this is how you learn. Think about someone who intimidates you, someone successful, confident, admired. In the fixed mindset, you might feel threatened. They're just better than me. But in the growth mindset, you feel inspired. What can I learn from them? That small internal shift from threat to curiosity is where transformation begins. It's not about pretending things are easy. It's about trusting that they're worth doing, even when they're hard. Because every time you stretch, you grow. Every time you stay in the discomfort instead of running from it, you build a self that is stronger than fear. And when you understand this, when you truly feel it in your bones, you realize that your greatest achievements will not come from talent alone. They will come from a mind that refuses to stay small. A mind that says, I can get better. I'm allowed to fail. I am a work in progress. And that's a beautiful thing. Because in the end, the greatest thing you can grow is yourself. As you grow older, mindset doesn't disappear. It deepens. It embeds itself into the way you set goals, respond to setbacks, and define your self-worth. It becomes the invisible architect of your choices. And nowhere is this more clear than in the pursuit of personal growth. Let's talk about effort, the very thing people with a fixed mindset often avoid. If you believe your ability is fixed, then effort is an admission of weakness. It says, I'm not naturally good at this, so I must not be enough. But if you believe your ability can grow, effort becomes something else entirely. It becomes the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It becomes the proof that you're still in the game. Carol Dweck found that students with a growth mindset didn't just try harder. They tried differently. They sought feedback, adjusted their approach, stayed curious. They weren't obsessed with looking smart. They were obsessed with getting better. And that difference, that tiny mindset shift, changed the entire outcome of their journeys. Now think about your own life. When something gets difficult, do you push or pause? Do you double down or give up? Do you say, I guess I'm not meant for this? Or do you say, this is hard, and that's why I'm going to master it? Here's the key. Struggle isn't a signal to stop. It's a sign that you're in the middle of growth. When your muscles burn at the gym, that's not weakness, that's progress. When your brain hurts trying to learn something new, that's not a red flag. That's transformation. Growth is not supposed to feel easy. It's supposed to feel unfamiliar, and that's exactly what makes it powerful. This mindset doesn't just affect how you learn, it affects how you live. In relationships, the fixed mindset says, if we're meant to be, it should be easy. But the growth mindset understands that real connection is built through honesty, effort, patience, and willingness to evolve. It says, we might not get it right every time, but we're committed to figuring it out. In careers, the fixed mindset says, if I fail, I'll be exposed. The growth mindset says, if I fail, I'll get smarter. That mindset is what creates innovators, leaders, artists, and entrepreneurs. It's what allows people to keep going when others stop. Not because they're fearless, but because they've learned to see fear as part of the journey. And that's the quiet secret most people miss. Success doesn't come from avoiding failure. It comes from building the kind of mindset that can walk through failure, learn from it, and keep moving forward with greater wisdom. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be willing to keep showing up, willing to stay curious, willing to embrace the awkward, the hard, the unknown. Because in that space, that exact space most people avoid, is where your real potential lives. Let's talk about feedback, that uncomfortable mirror that so many people try to avoid. In the fixed mindset, feedback feels like judgment. If someone tells you what you did wrong, it feels like an attack on who you are. You might shrink, you might defend, you might shut down. But in the growth mindset, feedback is something else entirely. It's not about your worth. It's about your path. It's information, a compass, a tool to help you grow. Carol Dweck's research showed this over and over. Students who were praised for intelligence began to fear feedback. They didn't want to risk losing the label of smart. But those praised for effort, they welcomed feedback. They were hungry for it, not because it felt good, but because they understood something powerful. The truth, even when uncomfortable, can help you grow. Now think about your own life. Think about a time someone gave you feedback, maybe a teacher, a friend, a boss. Did you tense up? Did you feel exposed? Or did you lean in? Did you say, "What can I learn here?" It's not easy. No one loves being told they got it wrong. But people with a growth mindset train themselves to separate ego from evolution. They understand that progress requires friction, and if you're always comfortable, you're probably not growing. This shows up in how people lead, too. Fixed mindset leaders tend to surround themselves with people who agree with them. They fear being challenged. They value looking right more than becoming better. But growth mindset leaders? They seek challenge. They ask questions. They hire people smarter than them. Because their identity isn't wrapped in being perfect. It's grounded in being better today than yesterday. And that difference creates organizations that either stay stuck or evolve. It creates classrooms that either punish mistakes or turn them into stepping stones. It creates families where kids either fear being wrong or feel safe enough to try. Because that's the heart of it, psychological safety. When you live with a growth mindset, you create spaces, inside yourself and around you, where it's okay to be unfinished, where mistakes are normal, where being in process is celebrated, not punished. That kind of space is rare and powerful, and it changes lives. So ask yourself, do I crave comfort more than I crave growth? Do I avoid challenge because I'm afraid of looking weak? Or do I lean into the stretch, knowing that it's the only way I truly evolve? Because every time you run from feedback, you reinforce the idea that your worth is fragile. But every time you welcome it, every time you say, "This hurts, but I needed it," you strengthen something far more valuable than your ego. You strengthen your capacity to rise. And that is the beginning of resilience. Not a trait you're born with, but a muscle you build. Now let's look at failure, the word that most people avoid, fear, or secretly carry like a scar they don't want others to see. In the fixed mindset, failure means you're not enough. It becomes an identity, a label, something final. If you fail at business, maybe you think you're not a leader. If you get rejected, maybe you think you're unlovable. If you struggle with a skill, maybe you think you're just not talented. But the truth is, failure only becomes final when you stop growing from it. In the growth mindset, failure is fuel, not in some motivational slogan way, but in the raw, gritty, real sense. Because every time something doesn't work, you learn what doesn't work. Every rejection shows you how to connect better. Every setback reveals a gap in your process. Every stumble becomes a teacher, if you let it. Carol Dweck studied high-performing athletes, entrepreneurs, and even artists. The ones who succeeded at the highest level weren't the ones who got it right every time. They were the ones who kept showing up after getting it wrong. Serena Williams, Michael Jordan, Thomas Edison, all of them embraced failure as part of mastery, not as a stop sign, but as a stepping stone. Let's bring it to you. Think of a goal you gave up on, something you once dreamed of, but dropped when it got hard. Maybe you tried once, twice. Maybe you fell short and decided, I guess it's not for me. But what if it was for you? You just stopped too early. What if the failure wasn't a sign to quit, but a signal to grow? This shift, from shame to learning, is life-changing. Because now you're not afraid to take risks. You're not frozen by the idea of looking silly or not being perfect. You realize that failing doesn't make you a failure. It makes you human, and more importantly, it makes you stronger. One of the most powerful things Dweck found is that people with a growth mindset redefine failure entirely. It's not I failed, it's I'm learning. Or it's not I'm bad at this, it's I haven't mastered this yet. That one word, yet, is like a bridge between your present and your potential. It keeps the door open. It keeps your spirit alive. Imagine applying that to your relationships, your career, your health, your dreams. Every time you hit resistance, you whisper, not yet. Every time the world says, you can't, you answer, watch me grow. That's not arrogance. That's belief in the process. And belief in the process is what keeps people moving when the road gets long. It's what fuels late nights, tough conversations, second chances, and impossible comebacks. Because failure will visit every one of us. But the way we interpret it, the meaning we give it, will decide who we become next. As we go deeper, we start to see how mindset doesn't just affect how we grow. It shapes who we think we are. It quietly builds the story we tell ourselves in every moment. The fixed mindset tells you that identity is carved in stone, that you are smart or not, talented or not, creative or not. And once you believe that story, you live inside it, even when it doesn't serve you. You stop trying things that challenge your identity. You say things like, I'm just not good with people, or I'm not a math person, or I'm too old to change. And these phrases, although they sound harmless, are not reflections of truth. They're reflections of fear of not measuring up, fear of looking like a beginner, fear of finding out that you're not who you thought you were. But the growth mindset tells a different story. It says identity is fluid, that your brain is not a fixed machine, but a living, changing, rewiring system. Neuroscience backs this up. Dweck's work aligns with the findings of neuroplasticity, the idea that your brain physically changes through practice, learning, and repetition. You're not stuck with the mind you have. You can build a new one. And that's not just science, it's hope. Let's say you believe you're bad at public speaking. That belief becomes a wall. But when you understand the growth mindset, that wall becomes a door. You realize, I'm not bad at it. I just haven't trained for it yet. My voice is a muscle. My confidence is a skill. Suddenly, what seemed like identity becomes a project, something you can build, shape, and improve. This doesn't mean you'll succeed overnight, but it does mean you're not powerless. You're not locked in. And that freedom, the freedom to evolve, is one of the greatest emotional gifts a person can experience. The way you speak to yourself matters here. Instead of saying, "I'm not good enough," the growth mindset says, "I'm learning." Instead of saying, "I failed again," it says, "I'm figuring it out." Instead of, "I'll never be like them," it says, "I'm becoming my version." These small mental shifts don't just change how you perform, they change how you live. You start to show up more. You stop hiding. You stop faking perfection and start embracing progress. You treat yourself with more kindness and more honesty. You become your own coach, not your own critic. And that internal shift, it ripples out. Your relationships change. Your job changes. Your daily choices, what you read, how you speak, what you dare to try, all start to shift because your identity has space to breathe. You no longer live inside a cage of who you were yesterday. You live in the potential of who you could become. And that space, that internal expansion, is where your real power begins. And now, we arrive at something subtle, but life-altering. How mindset influences our relationships. Because how you view yourself is only half the story. The other half is how you view others. The fixed mindset doesn't just judge your own worth, it quietly judges everyone around you. It creates a world of comparisons, assumptions, and quiet superiority or insecurity. Think about this. In the fixed mindset, if someone else is talented, it feels threatening. Their success makes you feel smaller. So, you might criticize, compete, or secretly hope they fail. Not because you're cruel, but because their excellence challenges your fragile identity. In contrast, the growth mindset sees other people's growth as inspiration, not intimidation. You start thinking, if they can, maybe I can too. That's a massive shift. Carol Dweck studied couples and friendships and found something fascinating. When one person in a relationship had a fixed mindset, they interpreted disagreements as signs of incompatibility or rejection. If we fight, maybe we're not meant to be. But people with a growth mindset saw conflict differently. They understood that closeness requires effort, that disagreements are invitations to grow together, not signs of failure. The growth mindset brings humility into relationships, the kind of humility that says, I still have things to learn about love, about patience, about how to listen when I feel defensive. And that mindset creates space for real intimacy, not performance. Let's take parenting as an example. A parent with a fixed mindset might believe their child is naturally gifted, or not, smart, or not. And without realizing it, they label the child early. He's the athletic one. She's the creative one. But labels, even well-meaning ones, create limits. They box a child in. But a parent with a growth mindset praises effort, not just outcomes. They say things like, I saw how hard you worked, or you really stuck with that challenge. They help the child build resilience, the most powerful trait a person can have. And more importantly, they teach the child, your ability can grow. Who you are is not locked. You are a work in progress, and that's something to be proud of. This shows up in friendships too. A fixed mindset friend might disappear when you grow because your change makes them uncomfortable. But a growth mindset friend cheers you on. They challenge you. They celebrate your breakthroughs because they're not afraid of your becoming. They're inspired by it. So ask yourself honestly, do I allow others to change? Do I judge people as fixed, as toxic, weak, bad with emotions? Or do I hold space for them to evolve? Because a growth mindset in relationships is a form of love. Real love. The kind that doesn't demand perfection, but welcomes progress. The kind that says, you don't have to be perfect to be worthy. That message, when embodied, can heal wounds that words never could. Let's move now into a deeper truth. How the mindset you carry shapes your resilience, your ability to rise again when life hits hard. Because life will hit hard. You'll fail. You'll get rejected. You'll lose. It's not personal. It's part of being alive. The question isn't whether it happens. The question is, what story will you tell yourself afterward? In the fixed mindset, failure is proof. Proof that you're not good enough. Proof that you were never meant to succeed. And once you believe that story, it doesn't just hurt, it haunts you. You start avoiding situations where you might fail again. You start playing small. You shrink your dreams so you don't have to feel that sting twice. But the growth mindset rewrites that entire experience. Failure isn't proof of inadequacy. It's feedback. It's data. It's a detour sign, not a dead end. And most importantly, it's temporary. In the growth mindset, a fall is just part of the climb. It's not the end of the story. It's the chapter where the hero learns something crucial. Carol Dweck's work showed this so clearly in school settings. When students with a growth mindset failed a test, they didn't give up. They said things like, I need to study differently, or I didn't understand that part yet. That little word, yet, became a bridge, a lifeline, a quiet reminder that the future is still open. Think about that in your own life. When was the last time you faced something that didn't go your way? How did you talk to yourself afterward? Did you say, I'm not good at this? Or did you say, I haven't mastered this yet? That tiny shift, that mental habit, is the difference between someone who stays stuck and someone who comes back stronger. And here's where it gets even more personal. The growth mindset doesn't promise quick wins. It doesn't say, you can do anything easily. It says, you can become someone who can handle hard things. That's a different kind of hope, a more honest kind. Because real change takes time. It's slow, messy, unpredictable, but it's real. Resilience isn't just about bouncing back. It's about bouncing forward, growing through what broke you. And that only happens when you stop tying your identity to performance and start tying it to effort, learning, and heart. Imagine getting rejected from your dream job. In the fixed mindset, it might feel like the end. But in the growth mindset, you turn it into a lesson. You analyze what went wrong. You train harder. You grow your skill set. And when the next opportunity shows up, you're ready, not bitter. This is how people build unshakable confidence. Not by winning all the time, but by realizing they can survive losses and grow from them. And every time you do that, you become someone your past self would admire. Now let's bring this idea of growth down to earth, into the quiet places of your daily life. Because the mindset that changes you isn't just for the big moments, like starting a business or facing heartbreak. It lives in the small choices, the quiet battles, the habits that no one sees. Here's the truth. Most people live on autopilot. Wake up, check the phone, go to work, react, complain, repeat. They don't stop to ask, what am I practicing every day with my thoughts? But the truth is, You are always practicing something. You're either practicing confidence or fear. You're either building resilience or reinforcing helplessness. You're either stepping into growth or shrinking into comfort. And this is where the growth mindset becomes a lifestyle, a daily decision. Not a personality trait, but a choice you make over and over. It means that even on the hard days, especially on the hard days, you speak to yourself like someone who is still learning, not someone who is broken. Imagine you mess something up at work. You forget a deadline. In the fixed mindset, the voice in your head might say, "I'm so stupid. I'm terrible at this." But in the growth mindset, the voice shifts. "Okay, that was a mistake. What can I change next time? How can I organize myself better?" One voice leads to shame. The other leads to change. It happens in health too. Maybe you're trying to exercise. You miss a day, or 5. The fixed mindset says, "I'm lazy. I'll never get in shape." The growth mindset says, "I fell off, but I can get back on track. I know what to adjust now." See the difference? One mindset creates guilt. The other creates momentum. Carol Dweck reminds us that the growth mindset isn't about perfection. It's about direction. Are you facing toward your goals, even if you're crawling? Or are you turning your back on them because you're afraid of failing again? Even your language matters. People with a growth mindset speak in action-oriented words. "I'll try a new strategy. I'll ask for feedback. I'll figure this out." These phrases signal ownership, movement, possibility. Compare that to fixed language like, "I'm just not that kind of person. That's not me. I could never do that." Those are sentences that shut doors, not open them. You see, mindset shows up in your schedule, your reactions, your relationships, your mirror. It's not abstract. It's everywhere. And once you start noticing your patterns, you gain the power to shift them. So here's a question to carry with you. What are you growing with your thoughts today? Is your self-talk building the version of you that you want to become? Or is it silently reinforcing a version that doesn't serve you anymore? Every moment is a chance to choose growth. Not someday, not when you feel ready, but now, in the small, simple choices that shape your future without permission. And now we arrive at the part that matters most, the legacy you leave, not just in the world, but in yourself. Because mindset isn't just about learning a skill or passing a test or climbing a career ladder. It's about how you live, how you love, how you lead, and what kind of voice you become, not just for others, but for yourself. The fixed mindset lives in fear. It whispers that if you're not perfect, you're worthless, that you're either smart or stupid, capable or not. It wants to lock you inside your past and make you prove your worth again and again until you burn out, break down, or disappear. But the growth mindset, it gives you something priceless: freedom. The freedom to try, to stumble, to rise, to be messy and real and unfinished, and still be valuable. It doesn't ask you to become someone else. It asks you to become more of who you already are, under the fear, under the doubt, under the layers of not enough you were taught to wear. And once you adopt that belief, that change is possible, that effort is power, that setbacks are setups, your life begins to move differently. You stop hiding from challenges and start leaning into them. You stop measuring yourself against others and start measuring yourself against your yesterday. You stop waiting for approval and start building your own momentum. This mindset transforms relationships too, because when you see yourself as someone who's always learning, you start seeing others that way too. You become more patient, more compassionate. You stop writing people off. You stop needing everyone to impress you. Instead, you begin asking, where are they in their growth? And what are they capable of becoming? That lens changes everything. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to rewrite the story of your own identity. You're no longer the kid who failed math, the adult who can't speak up, the person who always gives up. You become someone else, someone more honest, more whole, more awake. Because in the end, Carol Dweck's work isn't just research. It's a mirror. It asks us all, are you willing to stop proving and start evolving? Are you willing to stop chasing image and start building identity? Are you willing to meet yourself in the process, even when it's slow, even when it's messy, even when no one's clapping? If the answer is yes, then you've already begun. You've already stepped onto the path of lifelong growth. And you don't need to be perfect. You just need to stay in motion, with your eyes open, your heart humble, and your voice speaking gently to the learner within. This is your permission to evolve, to stretch, to rise again. Not because you must, but because you can. And if you stay faithful to the journey, the world around you will begin to shift, not because it changed, but because you did. And that is the power of mindset.